I wanted to just ask you, not just about your work, but how it's going to fit into the broader incoming Trump administration. And in particular, I guess I'm uncertain about roles and responsibilities regarding your position and Tom Homan's. I guess I just want to ask you just point blank, like, who's going to be in charge of the border?
On paper, Kristi Noem runs the Department of Homeland Security. She's the secretary, Senate confirmed, fully responsible. But when Minnesota became a problem, the president didn't send her. He sent Tom Homan. That tells you something immediately. When things get messy, the person with the title isn't always the person with the control. And that gap between who decides and who answers is the real story here. Minnesota didn't become a flashpoint because of one incident. It became one because events piled up. 2 fatal encounters involving federal agents in a short period of time. Both U.S. citizens, both caught on video that conflicted with official explanations. At that point, this stopped being about enforcement policy. It became about credibility. When video contradicts officials, when courts step in, when elected leaders start pushing back, the normal chain of command moves too slowly. That's when presidents stop managing the system and start managing the situation. This isn't about who's more experienced on paper. It's about exposure. Kristi Noem is a cabinet secretary. That means hearings, subpoenas, inspectors general, lawsuits. Her job is to run the institution and absorb the consequences when things go wrong. Tom Homan plays a different role. He doesn't run a department. He doesn't answer to committees. He doesn't need confirmation. He can be sent in, take control, and change direction without dragging the entire department into another round of fallout. When an operation becomes the story, the White House wants someone who can reset it fast. That's why Homan was sent.
With regards to the deployment of Tom Homan to Minneapolis, should the deployment of Mr. Homan to Minneapolis be seen as a sign that the president is dissatisfied with how the officials on the ground had handled the incident?
No, Mr. Homan is doing an exceptional job, and he has been working with Secretary Noem and President Trump over the course of the last year. Secretary Noem still has the utmost confidence and trust of the President of the United States, and she's continuing to oversee the entire Department of Homeland Security and all of the immigration enforcement that's taking place across the whole entire country. Of course, Secretary Noem is also in charge of FEMA, and we are in the wake of a brutal winter storm where hundreds of thousands of Americans have been impacted by that. So
there's another reason this operation drifted before it broke. Day-to-day strategy inside DHS wasn't being driven through a tight, formal chain of command.
Take us inside your reporting. What are you learning?
So this is fascinating. What it comes down to is Noem, with her senior advisor, Corey Lewandowski, who was supposed to be there temporarily, but is still there. They have been running a lot of the show inside DHS, which includes approving contracts. And what we understand is that the White House wants to move a lot faster to expand detention for immigration because they think that would really boost these arrest numbers and be able to make at least more good on President Trump's promise for mass deportations, even though they likely won't get to 1 million by the end of his first year. But what's been happening internally is that Noem and Lewandowski have been pointing fingers as they felt that pressure, especially on the heads of certain agencies like Customs and Border Protection. Even though they're at record low numbers on the border, the commissioner of CBP, Rodney Scott, who has always been a Trump loyalist, now believes and has been told that his emails are being monitored by Lewandowski because there's a sense that he might be undermining them to the White House. We also know Todd Lyons, the head of ICE, has threatened to quit on multiple occasions under this pressure to ramp up numbers, basically saying the reason we haven't been able to expand detention space has nothing to do with him as acting director, but more to do with Lewandowski and Noem's roles really having this outsized influence over the contracting process. So it sounds like a lot of finger pointing, gossip, drama within DHS. But what it comes down to is an administration really at odds with itself over whether or not it can come through on President Trump's key campaign promise and the leadership style of Noem and whether or not the White House continues to keep faith in her as the leader of DHS.
There's another reason this operation drifted before it broke. Day-to-day strategy inside DHS wasn't being driven through a tight, formal chain of command. It was shaped by a small circle of informal advisors around the secretary. That works, until pressure hits. Over time, enforcement shifted, away from narrow, targeted operations, toward highly visible, high-volume tactics. Border Patrol was pushed into roles it doesn't normally play. Interior enforcement became louder, faster, more exposed. Greg Bovino became the face of that shift. That approach produced arrests. It also produced backlash. And once the tactics became the story, the White House lost confidence in the setup. Once Homan was sent, things changed quickly. The public face of the operation disappeared. Command roles were reassigned. Some agents were pulled back. Those aren't advisory moves. They're decisions. And here's the key point. The person making the operational calls in Minnesota is not the person who will be called to testify about them. Presidents have always used advisors and envoys. That part isn't new. What's changed is where execution lives. In the past, envoys coordinated. Cabinet secretaries executed. Here, execution has moved closer to the White House, while responsibility stays with the department. Kristi Noem still signs off. She still gets subpoenaed. She still answers in hearings. But she's not the one being sent in when things break. That separation is unusual, and it matters. Here's the issue in plain terms. If something goes wrong, who answers for it? Congress will call the secretary. Courts will issue orders to the department. Inspectors general will investigate DHS. But if the key decisions weren't made there, those processes start chasing shadows. The White House has privilege. Agencies don't. That doesn't remove accountability. It weakens it. This isn't just about immigration. If operational control can move to the White House here, it can move elsewhere. The benefit is speed. The cost is clarity. And once clarity is gone, fixing mistakes gets slower, not faster. So the question isn't whether Minnesota calms down. The real test is this. When the next operation runs into trouble, does the same person make the decision and answer for it? If those two roles keep drifting apart, this stops being a temporary fix. It becomes a habit. And habits like that don't break systems loudly. They break them quietly, when no one can quite say who made the call.